I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, October the 20th, brought to you in part by Safeguard 32SG Mineral Dewormer, which is a Type C free choice mineral containing fenbendazole that attacks the energy metabolism function in parasites until they're eradicated. For more information, go to Merck Animal Health. Healthy negotiations, and this is the first week that we have truly seen truly healthy negotiations where our demand is outweighing supply of market-ready finished cattle, especially well-finished cattle, and the few cattle feeders that are still negotiating on their fat cattle sales have really dug in and have confidence in demanding more money for their cattle. So we are starting to see higher prices. It's amazing how when we see negotiations that we get higher prices, and that's what I've been preaching for the last 2 or 3 years, that we need more negotiation, guys. But all the formula guys and everybody that sells on the grid and everything is just hanging on the coattails of the few guys that sell negotiated and rooting for them to get higher prices, to negotiate for higher prices, yet they are not participating in the higher prices. And the packers really don't want to participate in the negotiations either, but the supplies have gotten so tight that they're having to. Like we didn't know it, like the cattle people didn't know it last week, that we were getting into a bull market. All of you guys that tune in here to the feeder flash sure knew that we were getting into a bull market, and so your packers come in early this week, just kind of sniffing around, and then the few fat cattle auctions that are significant, like Yankton, South Dakota, Dunlap, Iowa, places like that happen early in the week. Your packers really didn't dig in too much because they didn't have that much receipts, so there was really no need for them to tip their hand on how short bought that they are, or how much they really desired the cattle. So they didn't push the market too much on them. But getting in here to the meat of the week, middle of the week, and then they started trying to buy cattle, and then we had our regional packers, our smaller but still significant regional packers that pushed the market for numbers and pushed the market for quality because they don't have everything tied up. They got involved, and pretty soon we saw some pretty healthy negotiations. Most of our negotiated cattle sellers in the Northern Plains excuse me, are dug in at 152, and they have yet to give in for the most part. They want 152. They feel like they deserve 152. Your packers didn't want to give 152. So we started seeing them trade some cattle at 150, but they weren't the best cattle. They were the colored up cattle, the cattle that they didn't expect to grade towards the top of the quality range there, and they started buying some cattle at 150, and they figured everybody would cave and everybody would pile in at 150, but the board has been supportive this week. All of our fundamentals have been supportive, and so your negotiated sellers in the Northern Plains still got their heels dug in at 152. Now down in the Southern Plains, of course, they wanted 150, but they've been running several dollars back here for the last several months, but trading on a 145 market last week, which was a buck higher. They did start selling a few cattle at 147 in Kansas and Texas. Heard rumors of some 148 in Kansas late. Actually not so late that your packers couldn't have got those in on mandatory price reporting, but we didn't see them confirmed, but I heard several stories about some 148. And in the Northern Plains, maybe a few guys peddled some cattle at 151, but they were not confirmed either, but I do believe that there was some cattle that sold in the Northern Plains at 151. But you got to hand it to the negotiated sellers that are still dug in at 152. God bless them. They are saving our industry. They're keeping some hope for everybody else. But we've got really healthy negotiations. I feel like as we go forward here into Thursday and Friday, that we will for sure see 152 unless for some reason the board tanks, but I don't expect that either, because now our people that speculate in your cattle futures, your fund managers and those that play around in the futures there, they're seeing all the fundamentals that are bullish too, and they think things are going to keep going up. And I believe that we'll probably get 152 at least this week as we go through the day, and I expect some pretty healthy trade here on Thursday at 152, and maybe even getting better than that later in the week. But we are starting, the market is coming to us, guys, finally, and goodness, we are finally starting to see the market getting higher, as we know that our supplies are getting lower, and as low as they are right now on market ready fat cattle, they're going to get progressively tighter as we go forward. So we're in the early stages of a bull market. Hang on and let's ride. Talk about your politics a little bit, which a lot of you guys don't like me talking about politics, but everything's getting political as we get closer to our midterm elections here that are coming up here in less than 3 weeks. But President Magoo has released 15 million barrels from our strategic petroleum emergency reserves, which he's already pretty much sapped those, getting the gas prices a little bit cheaper, not as cheap as they were 2 years ago, but a little bit cheaper from the highs that we saw back in the spring and the early summer. He did get those anyway. Those were depleted, and then now of course our gas prices and energy are going back up, but released 15 million more barrels, which is just a smidge compared to what we use, but it still makes a difference whenever he dumps it on the market there, trying to get the gas prices cheaper before the midterm elections so that things will look a little bit rosier. But you know, we're getting down here pretty well depleted, guys. I've heard that our diesel reserves are as low as they've been since the early 1950s. That is a little bit scary, especially when we're in a tumultuous atmosphere here with wars going on and threats going back and forth and things like that. But as much as we would like our energy to be cheaper, I'm not sure this is the way that we need to do it. Talk about our cattle futures on Wednesday. Your live cattle futures for October are up 87 cents at 149.35, which I expect that to be a little bit cheaper than what our weighted averages are going to be this week. We could see weighted averages in the 5-area feeding region above 150, and finally you guys will show it to me and I'll believe it, and then I think the doors are down, and then we'll just keep going from there. December live cattle futures up 157 at 151.35. Your back months on live cattle up 72 cents to up 182. Excuse me. October feeder cattle up 40 cents at 175.22, and they are running at a pretty good premium again to what our cash market is, but the cash market is trying to get there. It just needs a little more confidence in your fat cattle and people to maybe forget what the cost of gains are going to be. But you know, we're running below that in our cash markets, but 175.22 on an October spot feeder cattle contract that is going to have to meet up with our cash index here in just a couple of weeks. So November is up a quarter at 178.07. Your back months on feeder cattle up 50 cents to up 165. Chicago Board of Trade corn futures were down 2 3/4 cents on Wednesday at 678 1/4. Beans were up a ½ cent a bushel at 1372 1/2. We talked about our fat cattle trade at the beginning of the report, but I'll give you the specifics here. Of course, Colorado's confidential. We'll never get to see what goes on there because there's not enough participation. I assume that we are going to see one of the other 5-area feeding regions become confidential very soon if we don't start emboldening our negotiated trade here a little bit. Iowa had 2,200 confirmed sales on Wednesday at 150 live, which would be $2 higher, and $234 on a dress basis. In Nebraska, about 200 head confirmed on there at 150 live and 232 dressed. Like I said, I believe there was some 151 in the Northern Plains, but it did not get entered in through mandatory price reporting database, so it did not get confirmed. Kansas, 350 head confirmed on Wednesday at 147. That's $2 higher. I had heard rumors and from pretty good sources that we had some 148 in Kansas. Of course, it didn't get confirmed, but we'll find out later in the week. Texas, 700 head confirmed on Wednesday at 147. $2 higher, and that's a bunch to gain in the Southern Plains. Box beef cutout values up big again. So your packers are able to increase the price that they're getting for their product. They can afford to give more for our product. Choice cuts up $2.61 on Wednesday afternoon at $253.39. Selects up 91 cents at $222.19. Slaughter still running at a good pace. 381,000 harvested through the first 3 days of the week, down just 3,000 from last week's big week, but up 19,000 from the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Livestock Risk Services with Dakota Moss, headquartered right there in the Exchange building at the Oklahoma National Stockyards. They are the LRP specialists, located right in the heart of our country, and they are licensed to sell LRPs in every major cattle production area. I don't care where you're at. Call them, ask them about what kind of prices you can lock in on your background in cattle if you're going to background some cattle this winter. Those of you that are lucky enough to have some forage or some feed put back to do that. For you cow-calf producers, you can lock in your calf prices even for calves that are not born yet. Check out LivestockRiskServices.com. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction. Late in the day on Wednesday, setting at 173.01, up 69 cents. We've been down on our RTI the first 2 days of this week, but up 69 cents, and we're going the right direction. Don't forget to check out Legends of the Fall sale that's coming up November the 4th in Miami, Oklahoma. They're going to be having that sale at the Buffalo Run Casino at Miami, Oklahoma there. They've got some really interesting consigners there. The King Ranch, Langford Cattle Company, and Wagon Hammer Cattle Company, and they've also got some really impressive ranch horses that's going to be on that sale. That is a premier replacement sale on cattle and a premier horse sale, and put that on your calendars. Legends of the Fall sale on DV auction November the 4th. Here on Friday, October the 21st, St. Onge Livestock, my buddy Justin Tupper there at St. Onge, South Dakota, is expecting 6,500 head of fancy ranch calves coming through the sale there on Friday. And then on Saturday, the 22nd, he's going to have a bred cow special. So don't forget about St. Onge Livestock coming up this weekend. Talk about your big sales on Thursday, or happen on Wednesday, excuse me. OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma, 6,600 head for their sale on Tuesday with the calves and Wednesday with the yearlings. Feeder steers were $2 to $5 higher. Feeder heifers $5 to $8 higher. You see why our index levels are higher. Weaned steer calves $6 to $9 higher. Weaned heifer calves $5 to $7 higher. The unweaned ballers, which are finding few friends this late in the season, were $3 lower. Stick out sale at El Reno was 55 head, 867 pound feeder steers at 176. That's $3 over the index level and 67 pounds higher than what that's based off of. Winter Livestock in Dodge City, Kansas had 3,200 head, kind of a mixed bag there, but mostly calves, and they mostly sold steady to $5 higher. Our Zoetis stick out sale of the day was Fort Pierre Livestock Auction in Fort Pierre, South Dakota. And you think, wait a minute, they have their sales on Friday. They have specials other days of the week. This was their black influenced calf sale. Had 2,000 head for that special sale. And you look at this automated market report from Cattle Market Central, and you see your best tested weights. How about 696 head of 5-weight steer calves, average 538, with a weighted average price on all those 5-weight steer calves of $221.86. 382 head of 4-weight heifers, average 463, weighted average price $207.93 on those, and 324 head of 5-weight heifer calves, average 536 in Fort Pierce, South Dakota, average price on those $201.38. Stick out sale in Fort Pierce, 95 head of 615-pound steers bring $213.50. Wow. Talk about several individual quotes that come from all around the circuit there. I know you guys like to see those. I love to give them. A couple of weeks back here, it was hard to find some stick out sales that might impress you guys. All of a sudden, we're seeing them all over the country. Stockman's Livestock, Yankton, South Dakota, sold some lot backgrounded steers. 81 head, weigh 857 at $187.50. How about Windsor Livestock in Windsor, Missouri? Never talked about them before. We don't get their automatic feed due to some internet problems, but we like Windsor. We like the folks there, and they got a hell of a sale going there in central Missouri at Windsor Livestock. Doug Parrish sells some black heifers, and they were backgrounded in a lot. 86 head sell for feed, weighing 648. Those heifers bring $181.25. Talk about a sale I've never talked about before, but I had a Feeder Flash gang member send me the quote out of there. It was impressive to me, being where it came from, out of Sand Mountain Stockyards in Crossville, Alabama. 62 head, 962-pound steers bring $155.25. Put about $15 of freight under those guys. How about Bloomfield Livestock Market in Bloomfield, Iowa? 225 head in one swath, weighed 986 at $176.50. Faith Livestock Auction in Faith, South Dakota. You said, whoop, they just had a sale on Monday. Can't help it, they had another one on Wednesday. A lot of calves moving up there in the northern plains. 120 head of steer calves, weighed 463 at $243.50. But the best quote, the most impressive that I saw on Wednesday, your Mackerson, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Platte Livestock in Platte, South Dakota. 72 steers weighed 857 at $189.10. And that's your Feeder Flash for Thursday.